Welcome to This Week in Work Hard Pittsburgh. How are you today, young Zabriawn?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
Young Zabriawn is here after what was a week of, I guess, upcoming changes or thinking strategically about upcoming changes. That's been the focus here. Again, is just kind of like reflecting and as an executive team and leadership team here, trying to figure out where we're going to be in 6 months and how we're going to get there. And so we thought today to help give some historical perspective on the coming changes that are going to happen in 2022, that it would be fun to kind of take a walk down memory lane and think of all the iterations of this ecosystem and tell a little bit of the story of this place since 2011.
It's kind of like the Temptations, right? Where they started off as a music group with like 2 people, and then they went to 4, then some people did some drugs, and they went to 3, then they went to 8, and now they're just like a group of older people who, like, we don't know who the originals are, but, you know, some of them had some interactions with your grandmother.
I mean, it's exactly like the Temptations.
It's exactly like the Temptations. So this is the Work Hard mini movie as narrated by Josh, while Zabriawn does Sudoku.
So Zabriawn, way back in 2011, you know, this really got started as a software product, and that software product most folks know, but it was a crowdfunding platform for political speech. The idea was that like you and 5 of your buddies could get together and run like horrible political ads like all over the country in a way to affect elections. But what was interesting, even way back then, is like we really authentically believed in this idea of like employee ownership. So, you know, most startups in Pittsburgh had a cap table with 2 or 3 people on it. Our cap table, while we were in Alpha Lab, had like 28 different creators and media people on it, and software engineers and marketing people on it. So like right from the get-go, sort of our DNA was about like collective ownership of assets that could build immense amount of wealth. And that wasn't, you know, honestly ideal, because if you're a venture capitalist or angel investor and you want to invest in a software product that eventually you're going to own because you're going to continue to dilute that equity and buy out that cap table, having all those voices in the room and having all those perspectives and having all those people is just not looked on favorably typically. So that product, Red Blue Voice, is how we ended up with this building. Way back before there was an Allentown CDC or Hilltop Alliance, sort of the mover and shaker up here on the hilltop was the Mount Washington CDC. They were like really well funded for a period of time there. And so I met that executive director and told him that, you know, this startup thing that we're doing is going really well. We're probably going to need some office space. Would you be interested in, you know, seeing if you can hook us up with a landlord here? And that's how we met Joe Calloway. That's how we met RE360. That Mount Washington CDC director got Joe Calloway to give us a year of free rent in this building. And all we had to do was occupy it and white box it. So people like Buzzy, and Buzzy's friend Kevin, who was a graphic designer at the time for us, you know, spent hundreds of hours, you know, building downstairs, painting upstairs. And then even to his credit, Joe Calloway put another 50, 60K in this building as like infrastructure, like new electric, some air conditioning that really didn't work and that we had to eventually replace and pay for. But it's, you know, his heart was in the right place. So that's kind of like just like the short story of how we like got this building. And then soon after that, it became apparent that that software company that we built was not able to raise money. And it was not able to sell the product as a white label solution to sort of like bigger companies either. And so that was the first moment in time where, you know, we were running out of cash and really had to reflect on like what was next for us. Like what were we going to do to be authentic to the things we believed in?
Spoiler alert, it would not be the last time that we would run out of money.
It would not be the last time that we ran out of money. So in that, we were stuck with this building basically, and no purpose around this building other than maybe whatever Buzzy was kind of doing in the basement here. I think at that point, Buzzy was really thinking about running this as like a recording studio and like bringing bands in and stuff like that. because that's where he was in his professional career. So we just turned it into co-working. It was really just an attempt to get enough income into the space so that like we could pay for rent. Because at this point we were past that first year of free rent, and Joe was charging us money, and there's electric bill and gas bill and all that kind of stuff. So there's been a ton of different characters who have co-worked and come through this building. Some of you might remember Matt Dugan. He's a fan favorite, I believe, from way back in the way back. Just an 18-year-old kid, content creator. I'd say big personality was the best way to describe him. And, everything from really sophisticated organizations that like ran Bernie Sanders' technology department during his presidential campaign, to just like people from the neighborhood have used that space way back, starting in like 2012, just as a place to meet and network and build relationships. But ultimately, like co-working, never really made us a ton of money. And I think you see with COVID, like a shift away from that, right? Like people aren't using this space like they used to. They're not coming here as a 40-hour-a-week office and sitting at a desk and like doing the grindy business of their small sole proprietorship or of their nonprofit or whatever. So even that has changed. And again, this is the theme of today. That has changed and shifted, and we expect it to kind of continue to do that. So all the while, though, like we knew that co-working wasn't gonna be the be all end all, and so we've always been trying to take products to market and do different things. We took that original software startup that was called Red Blue Voice and essentially just used that LLC to do the business of a digital and creative agency. And over 7 years, like that has continued to grow and scale, and now it does reasonably about $1 million in business every year. And if I think back and reflect back to 2013, we were probably doing like $7,000 of business a year. Like we weren't really doing much of anything. But in those experiences, right, in that like iterative approach to like growing something, like you learn all the things you need to learn. You minimize your risk. You get rid of sort of like the burden of having to take on a big client that you're unprepared for early. You work up to those sorts of things.
One of the things I think people get confused on a lot is at what point does it become, or where does Academy fit into that timeline?
That's a great question. So around 2015, one of the co-workers in this space was John Roma. He's a staffing person from a company called Onshore Momentum. Onshore Momentum is this giant staffing agency in Cleveland. They started out staffing like mechanical engineers into industry back when there was still like blue collar jobs in Cleveland. And then as the market shifted, they shifted to tech staffing, like software development, things like that. Anyway, that's a lot of detail. But John Roma was a good dude who was always here, kind of like looking how to connect the dots for the people that were just co-working in this 2,200 square feet of space. We have a really small office. And he took...
But it's nice. It's a nice one. It holds a lot of value.
Especially when the rug was new. If anyone is
interested.
The rug's a little shabby now, probably.
Well, a lot of people have slept here.
So John Roma took me out to Akron, Ohio, where the Software Craftsmanship Guild was running a web developer boot camp. And he introduced me to these guys in the hopes that we would essentially franchise their developer boot camp into Pittsburgh and provide the infrastructure and all of the support. Well, it turns out those guys were selling their company for $3 million to some ed tech conglomerate. Mm-hmm. And then that ed tech conglomerate changed and sold again, and they became Tech Elevator here in Pittsburgh in 2018 or 2000, something like that, 17 maybe. But in the meantime, we said, well, fuck those guys. Like, if they don't want to come partner with us, we'll just launch our own. And so John Roma introduced me to John Lang, who, of course, is the co-founder of Academy. And we just started talking about how that might become a thing that we do. And so this is like 2015. Through the gracious support of the Hillman Foundation, we were able to sort of bootstrap that first 1 or 2 Academy sessions into reality. Again, our our Hilltop real estate company, RA360, provided us with physical space to do those first boot camps at market rate. That wasn't free that time, Zabriawn. Don't get so excited.
Okay, right.
And we were able to continue to build Academy Pittsburgh through a couple more investments from Hillman and Hines. Even the Pittsburgh Foundation put some money in back then to what it is today, which is honestly an effective, respectable, equitable engine of employment for the region.
That's a lot of adjectives.
I'm good at that stuff.
Yeah, you do that well.
I believe at last count, we've put over 210 people into full-time jobs, and they're all making 60, 70K a year now, for the vast majority of them. And they're all in tech, and they're all in software, and they're all building their careers, and they're all doing cool things. So we went from software startup that failed to just straight up co-working space to creative and digital agency to technical private license school by the state of Pennsylvania. And now, you can see sort of the fringes of other products and other kind of shifts and changes in our perspective around the real estate holding company that holds Millbridge and with our partnership with New Sun Rising, effectively controls 744 East Warrington Avenue as well. And it's just, it's an interesting tale of how
white people can never fail. My timing, it's so good. It's so bow. I'm here all week.
This is a good point, because we're at a point in time where failure is in a very real and palpable way on the table again. We're running out of cash, as we expected to do, as we kind of burn through this last of philanthropic awards of 2020. And hopefully our whiteness is strong enough.
It is.
To allow us to persist and flip into the next opportunity. But with that opportunity, there's going to be another change. And that change is going to essentially have to match what philanthropy again wants to see us focus on. So, I guess the point of this was just to remind everybody how deep our history is and how much energy and collaboration and how many different people have put a finger in the pot and flavored this delicious soup of collaboration.
That's also okay. I'm gonna just leave you alone on that one. I did not finger any pot. But I do want to say that it is realistically, it is a very important story to remember that pivots are necessary in business, because, oftentimes, as is the case that you just heard, the first idea is really bad. It has no what were you thinking, And then you just got to figure out what the next thing is. So it's important to just kind of take inventory of where you are, what you have, what can go out the window to give you a little bit more runway, and, figure out what the next steps are.
And I think we'll close with that. I think Zabriawn, you summed it up nicely.
Well, beloved dub.
See ya.